Welcome everybody. We're excited to host today's webinar. Todd Austin, COO at Home Care Pulse. We're going to give it a couple minutes, just have some casual conversation while everybody joins in, and we'll probably kick off pretty close to 12:03, 12:04 Mountain Time. But also happy to have both Clint and Natalie with us. Clint is a Miami native, but they're located in Austin, or like most of us, from our homes and basements around the United States. So welcome, Clint and Natalie. Glad to have you two with me.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Todd. Great to be here.
Thanks, Todd. So
while we continue to let everybody populate in the room and get their audio checked, maybe we can share some memorable experiences from COVID-19 working from home, and I can kind of kick it off first. We were on a webinar Zoom call, and I came into the office for this particular webinar, but this one I had the camera pointed out my back window, and I've got a 4-year-old, and he rounds the corner. And he just drops his drawers and decides to go bathroom on the rocks. And so that's been my most embarrassing COVID moment so far of working from home and kind of dealing with the chaos at home. I don't know if you guys have any similar experiences from that, but also for all the people joining, we're just having a little casual conversation to let everybody populate, talking about some embarrassing COVID-19 work from home moments. So if you have any good ones, feel free to chat them out. We'll be happy to kind of reference those through. What about you, Natalie or Clint? Any good times?
Nothing quite like that, Todd. My biggest challenge is my 2 big, lovely cats who are very interested that I'm now working from home and tend to try to close my computer when I'm having HR conversations. So you can often see me throwing a cat off my lap. Hopefully they are well settled for this webinar.
That's great. Well, and you can't really file a complaint on those coworkers, can you?
Oh.
Yeah, I've got an 8-year-old and a 7-month-old, Todd. I've had a couple times where they've crashed the party, and that's been interesting. But I've seen some much funnier videos of people in funnier situations and doing the weather or whatever else. And so mine were very minor.
Yeah. I think we've all seen the bloopers going around, and they're always funny, because you can relate to them. When someone's talking and it's like, nope, you're on mute. How many times is that happening? So I love the realness and the authenticity that it brings, to the workplace and the partnerships. And we're excited to host today's core webinar. So for everybody jumping on the line, we're just having a little bit of casual conversation before we kick this off. We'll give it another minute or so before we get rolling. But while we're waiting, love to introduce and allow both Clint and Natalie to kind of introduce themselves, tell themselves a little bit about themselves. This is Todd Austin from Home Care Pulse, your host today. And I've got Clint and Natalie from CareerPlug. So Clint, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and your title and your inspiration at CareerPlug.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. Appreciate that. So yeah, I'm the founder here at CareerPlug, and I started my business in my apartment in 2007, really with this goal of helping people find the right career opportunities and helping businesses select the right people. I don't know why I got into that. I was always that guy that would help people out with their resumes and kind of give them career advice. And then when I started looking for a job myself, I was like, man, companies aren't really doing that great of a job of selling me on why I should go work for them. And I've always been an entrepreneur at heart. My first business was in college. I kind of created this tutoring business that ended up doing pretty well. So I saw an opportunity to help out, and here's where I am today. We've got about 10,000 clients now, and continue to grow, and have been excited to share a couple ideas with you guys. I'm just wrapping up a book that I've written called How to Hire. So I'm going to share a couple tips that are in the book. It'll be published probably later on this year.
That's exciting. Yeah, looking forward to read that. And I think many of the people on the line today can relate, Clint, of starting the business, in the garage, the basement, the apartment. This industry is built with grit, as you know, and excited to have you today. Natalie, what about yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background, how you joined the CareerPlug team.
Yeah, thanks, Todd. So I'm Natalie Morgan. I'm the Director of HR at CareerPlug. Originally from Wisconsin, but I've been in Austin for 6 years now and have been working at CareerPlug just as long. So been really exciting. So I joined CareerPlug when we were probably under 15 employees, and now we've grown to a team of 60. So it's been really cool to see the HR function grow, see just our team and our business change over the last few years, and really have a hand in helping build this culture that really Clint gets credit for and should be very proud of. It's a very people first, empathetic culture, very interesting place to be HR when you're also building a hiring software, right? So I feel very close to the product and our clients as well.
I think we've likely gave everybody enough time to join in. If everybody could just chat out, let us know that the audio sounds great and the visual effects are working good. That would be great. And then feel free to use the panel along the way, and we should kick this off. So once again, Todd Austin from Home Care Pulse. I'm your host today. Excited to talk a little bit about some of the data we found, and then also Boomerang hiring. It's back, the bench is back, and there's a lot of great strategies, to work on. And I know both Clint and Natalie have some great takeaways that everybody will be able to apply to your business. So hang with us as we go through this. Once again, some of you may have heard, some of you, this may be news, but Home Care Pulse and In the Know merged a couple months ago. We're really excited to start to deliver both insights and satisfaction management, and combining those into educational facts and really driving in home how we can improve data and learnings from data with educational pieces. Let's talk a little bit of, how does home care doing? What's the landscape? What's it look like? Many of you probably saw our COVID release. It's been interesting. PPP has been a huge topic of conversation, and I'm sure Clint and Natalie can relate to this with their clients dealing with small businesses. What's awesome is, in the home care industry specifically, we've had almost 70% apply and get funded for PPP loans. So this says great things about the industry and the outlook going forward. So the landscape is bright. I'm sure all of you have read the home healthcare news articles, different blog posts about the boom in home care. The question is, are you ready? Can you staff it? And do you have the processes in place? And that's what we'll talk a little bit about today. So, exactly here, what we're just talking about, PPP loans and what they were funded and being applied through. So we'll move through the data quick, set the foundation, and then let's talk about some learnings and how to apply it to your business. One of the things that is huge right now is changing applicants for caregivers. What's happening with the caregiver job market. Clint, Natalie, you guys can probably speak to this as much as anybody as you're seeing data come in from applicants. So everybody is probably experiencing some sort of decrease in applicants. Raise your hand, chat out if you can relate to this. But there is a decrease. The job pool, I think we all thought, hey, the economy, unemployment goes up, my job pool gets larger. That's not necessarily the case right now. In different pockets. So it's important to understand that there is a decrease in caregiver jobs and applicants that you're seeing. And this is where Boomerang hiring comes into place as a great practice to use. So ultimately, how many weeks has it took each home care agency to return back to pre-COVID-19 billable hours. This is what this report is talking about right here. And what you're seeing is essentially, the majority of home care agencies, so 53% have said that they've returned back, 47% said they haven't returned back to pre-COVID-19 hours. So we are starting to see that come back. I saw an interesting report from our friends over at Frax about intake and calls. So inquiry calls for new services has skyrocketed. So are you ready to take on all of these clients? Do you have caregivers to fill the shifts? What does your bench look like? How can you hire? How can you fill these as they start to come back to pre-COVID-19 and even beyond that, because the growth is there and it's going to be exciting. Now, the other portion of this that we've talked a lot about is, should I take a COVID-19 patient or should I not take one? Many of you probably attended the webinar. Our stance on it from a clinical perspective is yes, you should, if you can answer a handful of questions. I have PPE, I have caregivers trained, willing to take the case, and I can protect them. And you can isolate both the client and the caregiver to one case, so you're not spreading it. There's more on that in both of the trainings that we included, I think, pre and post webinar. So feel free to look at those learnings and apply them, because that will be the new norm. And that kind of brings me to the question today. How many of you are taking COVID-19 clients and caregivers? And Tyler will kick off this poll for us, but it brings a great question, because when COVID-19 first came down the pipeline, the answer was no. A substantial amount of agencies around the United States said, no, I'm not taking a COVID-19 patient. You look 3 weeks later, and it went from about 14% were taking a COVID-19 patient to about 25%. And then just 2 weeks ago, that was about 40%. So we're starting to see this landslide of people being comfortable taking COVID-19 patients. That can be a lot of different reasons. The understanding of it, how it spreads, availability of PPE to protect both your clients and your caregivers, and just also understanding hero pay and availability of the hours. So it'll be great to see how everybody is responding to this. And Tyler, if you'll show those poll questions, that'd be great. And so we're about 26% are taking them, 55% no, and another 18% are not sure. So good information there that we're kind of going back to around 0.25% of individuals are taking on COVID-19 clients. How many of your clients and caregivers staff have been diagnosed? So we're starting to see this increase too. Same trend. March 30th, not a lot of people had seen it. It increases. So this is going to become more common. And this is the important part of making sure you've got your clinical procedures and your hiring and how you're communicating with your caregivers. And, I know Natalie, Clint, you guys are both excellent communicators, especially when it comes to, hiring and onboarding and the best practices there. Maybe off the top of your mind, what's one tip that Clint, maybe you could give on, great ways to effectively communicate during a crisis to caregivers pre-hire? Is there anything you would add there as people are becoming more familiar with COVID-19 and the pandemic of something to add there?
Yeah, sure, Todd. As far as, let me say first that one adjustment that I made when we got into the crisis, and as Natalie said, we have about 60 employees, is that I really increased the frequency that I was communicating with people. And my rule of thumb was, if I was doing something monthly before, now I started doing it weekly. And if it was something that I used to do weekly, now I do it daily. And if it was something I used to do daily, now I do it several times a day. So that's one adjustment. And I think that can apply to the candidate market as well. But you know what? I would just be really upfront with them. And if you're still using the same job posting and language and kind of talk track in running through your hiring process, then I don't think that you're going to get the results, because you're not really staying in touch with what's really happening right now and what's on that candidate's mind, which is, I think, first and foremost, hey, is this going to be safe for me? So my advice is always to be upfront and genuine with people and just shoot it to them straight and say, look, I don't have all the answers with some of these things, but here are the steps that we're taking. And just ask them, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's great. I love that. And it really actually kind of brings us to our next talking point about just having a process. Especially during a pandemic, you've got to have a better process. And a lot of that is involved with safety protocols. Employees want to know that you have a strategy to protect them. Communicate it often. And use that as part of your strategy. And that goes back to items from our impact report that are going to stay around. It was interesting to me that remote hiring and interviews, 63% of agencies are saying that post-COVID-19 or post-pandemic, whenever that is, ultimately what they're saying is remote hiring and interviews is staying. No more bringing them in. Majority of people are saying that they're going to do the first initial interviews remotely. The other really interesting thing to me was just how we look at remote work in general. 51% of agencies are saying that they're going to continue to have remote staff. So as you're having this thought process about, is it better financially to have more remote staff? Is it more efficient to do remote hiring and interviews? Online caregiver training, 42% are saying they're going to adopt that. 33% said they were already doing it. So the landslide of the industry are having the same questions you are. You can go to the impact report on homecarepulse.com and you can view that. So once again, the same saying that we've preached over and over again at Home Care Pulse is make data-driven decisions. And this will allow you to say, hey, the industry is moving this direction. This could be the new norm. I can accept that and implement processes around it. Or there's probably resources out there that you can find online to help you implement some of these strategies and processes. So keep that in mind as you go through this. But I mean, it's the same thing Clint said, communication. Establish good communications, even before the hiring. Talk about what your COVID-19, your pandemic plan is to protect your caregivers. Use that as a hiring advantage. That's going to be something that continues to set agencies apart from others, is well-proven processes, and then rehiring. Same with the safety protocols, client screening, steps to take clients for testing, infection. These are all things that we've outlined. There's a training, there's 2 trainings. There's one for you and your caregivers to take to essentially on COVID-19 protocols and infection control. And then there's the second one that we put together with Littler. And this is going to help you understand legally what you can and can't do. So I highly recommend spending the time going through these and making sure your caregivers are trained and certified in this area. That's going to give them the confidence to go out into the workforce. These are free trainings, no cost associated with them, but important for the industry to have. So one of the things that Clint hit on that really I actually love that he talked about was communication. And reason being that this is important is satisfaction as an industry has gone through the roof. Now we talking about 0.12, decimal points of change doesn't look like a lot, but we're usually looking at this data from 100th decimal point to see change because there's so much data there for that fluctuation. But you're talking about training has gone up. Well, what kind of trend did we have with training? Most people are moving to online caregiver training, and caregivers are essentially saying that they like that they feel like they're better trained and equipped. Communication has gone up. Same thing Clint just spoke to. So they're recommending employees, their training is received. the recognition has gone up. Office support staff. So, we're looking at the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks versus the prior 8 weeks before COVID-19, and satisfaction is going up, and it all stems from great communication. So if there's one thing to continue to do is communicate. Fragmented office staff leaves a lot of challenges, and processes will help apply these. So some of the things to definitely consider as you're going through and readdressing all of your business cases and how you want to apply this for the long term is really talking about, how does satisfaction help me? And what do referral sources want to see? Because referral volume has also changed. I know we talked about referrals and volume on the last webinar, so I won't talk too much about your revenue cycle, because we're really focused on hiring. But it's important to also acknowledge that the majority of people have seen referrals decrease, except for in one area. The only area that has increased is from past and current clients and families. So that's also a good indicator of great communication. Same practice that we talked about on the last webinar a month ago with My CNA Jobs was really talking about your revenue cycle and making sure to take advantage of all those growth opportunities in there. Just for a reminder, those are essentially 3 growth levers you can pull: new sales, new acquisition, which we're saying, hey, referral sources are down. Price increases, so your current base of just purely increasing prices on them, that's another one. And then upsells, cross sells, and reactivations of paused services. So those are, it's great that the industry is acknowledging that, and we're taking advantage of communicating often and what we're doing in our agencies to improve in those protocols. So enough preaching by me on revenue and the data. I feel like everybody probably has a good baseline of where the industry is at. And that was the purpose of this first segment, is making sure we all understood how the industry was curving from a data satisfaction, referral source, and revenue cycle. Let's really get into the nuts and bolts of it with Clint and Natalie here on things to do. So going back to this, satisfaction up, everybody's got a good baseline of data. Natalie, I'll let you take over at this point, and let's talk a little bit about the boomerang hiring, the bench, and efficient ways to hire and onboard caregivers during COVID-19. How's that sound, guys?
Great. Thank you, Todd. Hang tight, and I will share my screen.
Once again, while Natalie's doing that, there'll be a ton of questions. I already see them coming through. Feel free to chat them out as we go along. We'll get to those at the end with a little bit of a Q&A, and Tyler will continue to moderate those. Connor and Tyler from our team will answer as many as we can. So use the chat, use the Q&A section, and we'll get to those towards the end. With that being said, Natalie, Clint, let's get rolling on boomerang hiring.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Todd. And Eileen, I saw you had a question here real quick on the on being able to train candidates on the best way to use technology. Again, I think there just has to be a lot of communication and maybe in some cases a little bit of hand-holding. You may need to just get on the phone with the person and kind of talk them through it. But I think that if you're willing to go the extra mile to show them that's actually going to build a lot of loyalty with that candidate. So I see that as an opportunity for you. All right, so let's jump into it. Boomerang hiring. Here's what I'd say is that you already know this, but your people are your biggest growth constraint to your business, right? If you're able to hire effectively and really stay staffed, then the growth potential for your business is unlimited. But boomerang hiring is not going to solve all of your problems, but it could be a nice, meaningful slice of the pie to make up where you're getting your hires from. So let me tell you a little bit more about what boomerang hiring looks like for us and why it's important. You should be able to reduce your time to hire, get a faster ramp time, and fewer surprises. So really, what you're talking about here is someone who's already a proven entity, and being able to stay in touch with them and bring them back in and get them out into production very quickly. I'll tell you about one of ours before I get into some examples on your side. So Anna worked for us, one of my first employees really, 2013. She got hired as a referral from a guy named Walter, who is one of those really outgoing people that seemed like he almost referred half the company employees to us. Identify who those people are in your company, by the way, and make sure that you're nurturing them and giving them some incentive. They probably know a ton of other great candidates for you. But Anna was one that Walter brought in. She decided after working for a few years with us to go get a job working on a political campaign. And I was very supportive of that. I wished her the best and said, hey, I'd love the opportunity to work with you in the future. We'll see what happens. Fast forward a few years, and we were looking to hire a marketing person. And someone in the meeting said, hey, you know, Anna is going back to grad school, and she's looking for some part-time work. So it was that tip that allowed us to reconnect with Anna and bring her in. And the time that she spent away from us, she gained some really strong skills, especially in content marketing and email marketing. And now she's back as a part-time employee, but I think that I get more out of her in 20, 25 hours a week than I would get out of a 40-hour full-time person. So she was definitely a home run boomerang hire for us. I think she really carries the weight of about 2 marketing people right now with a part-time job. So some of this may seem obvious, and I was kind of like, should I even talk about this? But then I saw a stat in a report that came out recently that said that 67% of employees say that their former employer did not conduct an exit interview. So the exit interview is really how you tee up the boomerang. You've got to be able to be excited for them. And no matter what the circumstances is with them leaving, I always try to leave things on a good note. Because even if this is someone that I didn't want to hire again myself, I want to say, you know what, I want you to feel good about CareerPlug and your experience here as good as you can, and be able to go out and say good things about us, or at least not say bad things about us. But I want to show people that I care. I want to ask for feedback. So here's the thing with an exit interview is that you are giving them the opportunity to tell you things that you could potentially improve about your business. And possibly more important, or just as important, you're allowing them to potentially rant a little bit. And while you may not have the patience for that in that moment, I think that it's important because it's a much better for them, or for you, for them to be able to get a little bit off their chest, talking to you directly versus going on to Glassdoor and writing about it. And I've seen a big difference there. If you don't conduct exit interviews, people are going to leave more feedback, negative feedback on your company with Glassdoor. And you want to talk about a challenge with hiring great people, especially in a competitive market, don't put yourself in that kind of position where you have some embarrassing reviews on that site. And then really just, I would say, communicate with them and make a plan to stay in touch. Say, hey, look, I really want to stay in touch with you. And if there's anything that I can ever do, let me know. Part of this is really just being genuine. What I do is when we have someone leaving, Natalie automatically confirms with the manager, is this someone that we would want to come and have work with us again? If you're a bigger company, it's important to keep track of this and log this somewhere like in an HRIS or just even just your personnel files, because you'd be surprised at how many people will end up getting rehired at a bigger company because you know, they didn't really know the circumstances of how someone left. But I would always ask, and if I do want someone to work with me again, I'm starting to talk with them about coming back already, saying, hey, if you ever want to come back here, I just want you to know, and I don't tell this to everyone, the door's open for you. So I had another employee named Casey take me up on this. This was probably 5+ years ago. She had started working with me from out of college. She had never really worked in a kind of corporate job before, and she told me, I'm going to go work at this corporation. And I said, hey, Casey, I'm really excited for you, but that's a very different kind of culture. And I'm not sure, we'll see how it goes for you, but that might be challenging. So if what I would say to that is, Casey, she went in and about 3 weeks later, huddled up in a conference room at this corporation, and she's like, hey, I hate it here. Did you really mean what you said, and can I come back? And I said, yeah, no problem. And we had an employee back with us producing and more loyal than ever within about 2 weeks. And now she's still with us, and I'm sure she's going to be with us for the long haul. If someone is not going to be a good resource for you, or even if they are, ask for the referral. my best ever employees that have left have helped me find their replacement. So I know that's not always circumstances. Sometimes people just are no-shows and they stop showing up. But the ones that are leaving on a good note, challenge them and say, hey, is there anyone you can help me? Because I think a lot of times they'll take pride, you know, with the clients that they're taking care of and things like that. They're actually going to want to assist you to be able to find some other good people to take care of their clients. All right, so this is the challenging part. Some of that stuff I talked about, I think was common sense, but really this is about how do you stay connected with them. All of you probably know someone who's really good at staying in touch with you and always gives you a call whenever it's your birthday, or sends you some kind of note on some other time, maybe your anniversary or something else. It's not that those people just have a great memory. Is what they've done is they've built a system to stay in touch with people. And I was one of those that where I always felt bad. I had buddies that would contact me for my birthday, and I was like, oh man, your birthday was 3 weeks ago, I'm sorry. And one day, not too long ago, maybe a few years ago, I said, you know what, I'm gonna put all of my friends' birthdays in my calendar, and I'm gonna make a note ahead of time to send them a card. And now I do that, and now I am the guy that everyone knows as the one who's great at staying in touch. All this really is just making some effort on your end. So I listed a few different things that I've seen people do that's been effective here. One is, you know, create an employee newsletter or just get something out on social media and send it to people just to give them some tips on what's going on, or bringing them up to speed on what's happening in your world. I think that it's much better to be able to contact people one-to-one. Make a note to send someone a call, give them a call, send them a text, even have someone in your office put together birthday cards and send those out to people regularly. Little touch points like that can go a long way. And on the creative part, I've seen some groups create an alumni program, and just a way for people to stay in touch with each other. Sometimes with that, they'll tie in the referral program. So referral programs are great internally. I've seen some groups actually extend that out to former employees and even have a deal with them if they were to send over quality people, that they would still be eligible for some sort of referral bonus. So those are some things to think about there. From there, I want to turn it over to Natalie to talk a little bit more about the actual hiring process. And like I said, she started with me real early on, right out of college, as kind of a sales and marketing assistant. And I saw her potential with the empathy that she had and just the care that she took just in working with other employees and building relationships. And I said, I think you've got potential to build a career in HR. Now I would consider her to be one of the strongest HR leaders in Austin. Natalie, I'll let you take it from there.
Thanks, Clint. That's quite a compliment. So want to talk a little bit about the hiring process for Boomerang hires. So following a standard hiring process we know is key, right, to consistently making the right hires. But when you have employees who've maybe already gone through that hiring process, question comes up, do we need to do the same steps again? How do we modify it? There isn't really a hard and fast rule on this one. But a couple things to think about and put in context as you figure out what to modify is one, what kind of qualification do you still need, right? Are there certain skills you need to check up on, certifications? You might already be more confident that they're in their character and their behaviors if you've worked with them before, so don't need to go as in depth with that in the interview. How much time you spent apart really matters. Have they had multiple jobs in between where you'd want to learn about those before rehiring them? Or has it been a situation like Clint mentioned with Casey where it was just a couple weeks, we really didn't need to go through a whole new hiring process for her? And then evaluate what role they're coming into. Are they coming into the exact same role as before? Or is this a brand new role, right? Where you might be conducting a hiring process internally anyway, if they were still there, so want to run them through that. So this is what maybe like a standard hiring process would look like, from review, phone screen, assess, interviews, verify, that's the reference checks, background checks, and then the offer stage. So one way you could modify it, just kind of condense a couple of steps there. Called it an interview or a conversation, right? Maybe it's really just gauging someone's interest, being a little more informal than you would be during a standard hiring process since you already have a relationship with them. There might still be some assessment step there based on the role, still verifying. You want to stay in check with your own compliance and standards if you need to run new background checks, and of course, giving a new offer letter. You could do an ultra condensed hiring process. So for example, some employers who are dealing with layoffs due to COVID, and this is a pretty temporary gap of just a few months. This might look more like, hey, let's have a conversation, make sure we're still on the same page for you coming back, and then really just take care of the compliance steps to bring them back on board. Which brings us to onboarding. So rehire onboarding. The main thing here is, you want to do all the same stuff you do for normal new hires, gather the materials ahead of time, take the time to check what forms you're still using that are valid and what forms need to be revised. It's a pretty good rule of thumb anytime you're kind of ramping up hiring again, but you don't want to rely on, oh, I've had this person before, I don't need to look at their onboarding materials, they've done this once. You want to revisit what they have done before and see what needs to be updated. One example of this is the offer letter. They do still need a new offer letter because they are beginning a new employment term with you. So all that standard stuff from terms of employment to their compensation to their title and start date, give them a new offer letter and make it official. And then the Form I-9, which we're all familiar with, that verifies identity and eligibility to work in the US. So you may not know, Form I-9 has a special Section 3 specifically for re-verification and rehires. So you can use this if you rehire the employee within 3 years of their original start date. You just take out their old Form I-9 and fill out this section. You can also choose to complete a completely new form as well. Whatever you do, just make sure you maintain both copies. And then other paperwork, like I mentioned, rehires as a best practice should complete the same new hire paperwork. An employment agreement, for example, it may have language that is only binding until termination. So since they have been terminated or now rehired, you're going to want to have them review and re-sign again. Same with that other direct deposit, emergency contact, handbook acknowledgements, whatever is in your standard onboarding process. Don't take for granted that you have all the updated information there. Make sure you review that with them. So for training, you still want to refresh rehired employees on training and company policies. Again, kind of depends on how long that gap is. But just because they've worked with you before, you don't want to skip it altogether, even though they should have a much faster ramp time than a brand new employee. But updating on processes in general, get on the same page. Also kind of a good opportunity to reset some maybe bad habits that had seeped in before. And then the last thing we wanted to introduce to you before I hand it back over to Clint is this concept of an expectations interview. So this is something we do and we found is a really great tool to use with new hires and rehires alike. So this is a conversation that usually happens on the first day with the manager and the employee in a one-on-one. And you start by talking through the job description, training plan, right? Lay out the expectations for the job, but then really diving into asking some questions about communication and how to build a working relationship between the manager and the employee. So some questions we usually ask, how does someone win with you? How do they lose with you? How do you like to receive praise? How do you want sensitive issues to be addressed? All these can be really effective questions and answers for managers to know and leading that team member. And then, flip it and have the manager answer those as well, right? It's great for an employee to know how to win and lose with their boss, how to give them feedback, and can start the relationship off on a really great foot. All right, Clint, I'm going to hand it back over to you for some more best practices.
All right. One thing that I want to make clear is that there are some real challenges out there, right? I've seen a couple people put questions or comments in about, caregivers are making more money at home with unemployment, people are not showing up, things like that. So I always try to think about things in terms of what I can control and what I cannot control. And the pool and the pie for candidates has gotten smaller right now. I think it'll increase again once some of the unemployment stuff changes and as the COVID-19 becomes more under control. But for right now, it's a smaller pie. So what you can control is making changes to your process and your approach to try to get a larger slice of that smaller pie. And that's really what I want to talk about right now with some of these best practices. So as I mentioned earlier, I wrote a book called How to Hire, and it should be published sometime later this year. And I just want to go through some concepts with you that are in the book that are really part of our philosophy with hiring, and have helped us and our clients have a lot of success. And everything that I've put in here, most of this is all built into our CareerPlug software system for our clients to use too. So the first one is really know who you are. And what I mean by this is, have you established your mission, your vision, and your core values at your company? If you haven't, I would say above all things, take that away and work on those things. So core values in particular are very important. We've got them integrated throughout our entire process. So we talk about them in our job descriptions, on our careers pages. We have them incorporated into our interview scorecards. We have questions specifically tied to our values to measure culture fit. And then on the other side, within performance side of things, they're part of our performance reviews, as well as our recognition. So we encourage, we do a thing called shout outs on Fridays at the company where we recognize each other, and we encourage people to talk about a specific core value when it comes to recognizing someone. So I would work on those first and foremost. The second thing is really know who you need. And it may be obvious to you, but you'd be amazed at the clarity you'll get by writing this down and documenting it. We have a form that if you contact us, we can send it to you, called a missing person report, also known as an ideal candidate profile. And what this does is document every attribute that you're looking for with a successful hire, not just someone that can show up and fill the spot, but someone that could truly be great for you. And then maybe also a couple things, red flags to look for. Then it takes it a step further and it says, how are you going to measure this person? How will you know? And being able to document all that down is really important. What I found as an owner is that I usually, I think, have a pretty good instinct on some of these things, and I kind of know some of this, but early on, a lot of that was in my head. So when I had other people start hiring for me, instead of me being the main one doing it, we made some mistakes because I hadn't completely downloaded all of that stuff into a system so that our managers could use that and know to look for the same things. This next one's really important, especially right now. It's show who you are. So you have to think about what experience do people have when they go out and look for you online. Maybe they saw the job on one of the sites on Indeed or My CNA Jobs, something like that. But then they Google you. They want to find out a little bit more about you. What does your careers page look like? What does your Glassdoor profile look like? How proactive are you being about showing your culture and what it's like to work there? I've seen some people that don't have a careers page at all. I've seen some that have kind of a bare minimum that, you know, oh, we're always looking for good people. And then I have some that really use this as an opportunity to showcase their culture. And those are the ones that are going to stand out and the ones that will win that larger slice of the pie. So just find a way, and I'll talk about this in a further slide, but make sure that you're really showcasing who you are and use your people. I don't like using stock photos and that kind of stuff. Have real photos of your people, have videos of them. Why do you love working here? Things like that. That stuff goes such a long way with people because these caregivers have an option out there. They can go choose who they want to work for right now. And what you want to do is make them really want to work for you. Okay, this next one I think is an important concept for everyone to think about. It's recruit like you sell. And I do this because you know what, you've got a situation where some people will treat a new client as being more valuable than a new employee, even though a new employee, especially in your business, is a multiplier for you. So I don't know what the math is, but I imagine that a new employee caregiver is going to be worth 5-10 times more to you than any individual client would be. But we don't always act that way when it comes to recruiting them. When we think about the client side of our business, we have a marketing plan, we have a marketing budget, we have a sales process in place, everything's documented. And then there's also just a sense of urgency that you have if a new lead comes in, you're following up on it right away. what I've seen with a lot of clients that we work with, they don't think about their candidates that same way. They just don't get treated the same way. I think part of it is this, like, well, hey, I'm the one that's offering you a job. You should be grateful. But the reality is it's a candidate's market right now. And if you have that mindset, you're not going to win. You've got to think about this like a sales approach. If someone's really strong and they didn't get back to you after you sent them an email or something else, pick up the phone and call them, follow up. I wouldn't just say, hey, well, they didn't get back to me, so, you know, that's it. They're not going to be reliable. In this market, you can't do that. All right, so the next one, interview for the big three. So the big three for me are ability, motivation, and culture fit. Ability is one of those things that you can measure either by their experience. Sometimes if you're looking at an entry-level person, an assessment can help out, so you can gauge someone's personality to see whether you can train them for the job. Motivation, we do an interview called the motivation interview. And it's probably the most popular interview in the whole process for us. So this is one that I would, you know, I think about little nuggets you can take away from the presentation. The motivation interview, I think, is a big one. So we ask someone, 5 years from now, you and I are sitting next to each other. What does awesome look like in your world? And then we have them outline it in 4 different dimensions of their life. So one is their career, one is just financial, and then we have 2 other kind of open fields for them to choose things. Well, they usually choose things like family or faith or maybe a hobby, things like that. But you've shown that you're taking a personal interest in them, right? And you've also, through this conversation, helped them see or gauge themselves whether they can actually achieve those things by working with you. And then they've just given you gold as a leader because they've told you what really drives them and what they care about. So now, if you're able to help them get that in life, they will be forever grateful and long-term loyal to you. So I would think about that on the motivation side. On the culture fit side, that's one of those ones that I would have some specific interview questions tied to core values. And I would try to get some of your team members involved too, because I found that when you involve your team in the interview process, you're able to, they're able to see things that you don't see. And there's also just more buy-in across the whole company. So that's, in our world, what we do is usually have, I'll pay for the team to take the candidate to lunch and just get to know them on a personal level. I'm not sure, you know, what the best application would be for you, but just think about how you can get them involved. And I think that's really important. Okay, make it repeatable. If it's just you doing all this and you're kind of like, hey, this is how I do it, that is not going to be able to scale. So you need to have all this stuff within a system. You need to have processes down. Ideally, it'd be great to delegate a lot of this to someone else on your team so they can own it, at least up to the interview portion. And then from there, just make it repeatable and improve it. So it's just like a sales funnel. You've got candidates coming into the top, how many of those convert into interviews, and then how many of those convert into hires. Within the funnel, you want to look at what percentage are converting, and then how quickly are they going from one step to the next. And make changes within the system to see what you can do to improve those things. I'll give you an example of like if you were able to get back to candidates faster, I bet that you would book a lot more interviews. I'll get on that just in a minute. The last one I've got here is retain from day one. So this is something, I think it starts with onboarding. Right when you make a hire, make it a big deal, celebrate with them, and then set the tone with your onboarding process. Is your onboarding process more about just getting the forms done, or is it about building a lasting relationship and connecting them with your organization? The last thing I talk about in the book is just making relationship deposits. And this is really just showing care. And in your world, I think it's more important than ever. Think about what's your bank deposit and relationship deposit balance with your people. Have you been making a lot more withdrawals or deposits? Based on the satisfaction scores, it seems like people are making deposits right now. But always be mindful of that, especially your key people. Okay, on this next slide, I want to talk real quick, share something from our friends over at MyCNA Jobs. Brandy Kritaika had this concept that I want to share with you, which is building your strongest bench. And that's a combination of taking care of your current employees. The #1 strategy for recruiting is retention. Take care of them, maybe entice them to pick up some more hours. I think it's always easier to get more out of your current team or your current clients than it would be to try to add new ones. And then have that bench of what she calls almost employees, people that are just about ready to go, and you've always got to be working on that in your world. And then you've got a list of other people who could be employees. I'm going to go through some specific tips on what you could do to grow those now. But I also wanted to announce that there's a partnership we have with MyCNA Jobs and an integration that's going to be launching next month in June, where you can post a job within CareerPlug and it'll automatically get posted out to MyCNA Jobs. And then we're together introducing a new offer that is going to allow you to purchase an unlimited job package from MyCNA Jobs. So that's a new development. I think something that's really exciting. Okay, I want to run quickly through these benchmarks. We did an analysis of 26,000 jobs within our system that were posted in 2019, and across caregivers, there's some large brands here, Right at Home, Comfort Care, Home Watch, Assisting Hands, and then a number of independents. And there are a few takeaways that I wanted to share here with you. The first is that industry leaders build their own talent pools. I think what you'll see here on this graph is that, or on this table, is that job boards are still the largest portion of hires. And with job boards, this category is for like the large job boards, like the general ones, Indeed, ZipRecruiters of the world. 37% of the hires, but 93% of the applicants come in from them, but only 37% of the hires. Now, when you look at careers pages, they only make up 3% of the applicants, but 23% of the hires. You got to think about your careers page right now. Is it an asset for you or a liability? Go back and go through this process and apply as if you were a candidate, and see what you think, whether you like that experience or if it's something you need to change. This area that says custom link, this is a specific thing for jobs that are outside of the big jobs that we post to. This will include, for right now, MyCNA Jobs, as well as connections with local universities, as well as Craigslist and things like that. 36% of the hires are coming from this source, and they have a higher rate of 15%. The highest hire rate is, not surprisingly, comes from referrals. So it's not a huge source across our system, 3% of all hires, but 18% of the people who apply as a referral get hired. So I think when people get into a jam, they say, hey, look, I need more from the job boards, I need more from there, where really it's about the quality over the quantity. If you could find a way to boost your presence and build a stronger referral program, or find some unique sources, get more from places like MyCNA Jobs, I think that's going to be your best bet. Now, the next one is about following up. So industry leaders have systems to respond quickly. Average time to contact from when someone applies to when they hear from someone in the healthcare industry across of all of our applicants was 8.7 days, which surprised me. That seemed like forever. But if I had my team look at the top 20%, the top performers, they were contacting people the same day. And these are the ones that are going to get the results. It's better to be first than to be best. My number one tip here is to use text messaging, if you're not already, to be able to get in touch with candidates. We're seeing a much higher response rate from that versus email, and even from phone calls. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is just candidate experience. If you look, we saw a stat that said 50% of job seekers reported declining an offer just because they didn't have a great experience. That would be so frustrating to me if I had just a really strong applicant, but then they just didn't like the experience, and they didn't take the job offer because of that. Here are my tips. And again, go through and apply as if you were a job seeker. And research your company. See what you find. Are you proud of what you found? Is there ways for you to make it better? Be out there, be visible, be authentic. Show real pictures of your people and testimonials. Make it easy for them to apply from their phone. I've seen some cases where 60, 70, 80% of candidates will drop off of an application because it's too long or it's not mobile optimized. And then the number one gripe from candidates in the process is that they don't hear back from people. So communicate openly with them on the process. If someone isn't going to be a good match for you, just let them know about that and wish them well with their job search. What you'll see on this next slide is that this 44% of people have left a positive review online after having a good candidate experience, and 25% of them gone on and left a negative review. So you have to think about what am I risking by not following up with that unqualified candidate, and how could they potentially hurt my brand. That's really it for us. I know we have some clients on already that work with us, and for some of you who don't, just CareerPlug, what we do is help you create an attractive job within a matter of minutes, get it out to leading places where candidates look for jobs, make it easy for you to pre-qualify candidates and schedule interviews, and then have a system in place for you to manage people through the whole process and stay in touch with them. And whether that's someone who makes it and gets hired, or someone that doesn't make the cut for you. Either way, our goal is to make hiring easier for you and for you to look really professional and get the best results possible.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Clint and Natalie. Now, Natalie, if we go back a few slides, Clint, to your five bullet points where you talked about the missing person. Can we jump back to that slide? Because there's something that's really actually interesting. And you talked about ROI, or what is your multiple for caregivers. And while you were talking about that, we pulled up the data from the most recent benchmark study report. And what's interesting is the median is about 2x. But if you're in the 95th percentile, it's 5x. So it's exactly what you said. So it's how can you optimize your funnel, just like the sales funnel, right? So interesting question for everybody, and maybe you can chat out yes, no. Are you looking at your hiring process like a sales funnel? And, so everybody, if you can just chat out yes or no real quick, we'll get a pulse on that. But you talked about retain from day one. What is the multiple? Do we treat them like they're that multiple? So the median in the industry is $11,477. And if you're in the 95th percentile of, the client lifetime to caregiver lifetime value, it's $71,000. So that's a huge difference. There's a huge disparity in being great at hiring and retaining versus just being, average. So talk a little bit more about kind of the steps to take to improve that process. And I know some of that has to do with your platform, and we're not here to, fully talk about CareerPlug as a platform, but the process in general, how CareerPlug solves that problem.
Yeah, really at the top, you've just got to look at the entire funnel. So there's some things that you may not have visibility on if you're not using some kind of software like ours. The first thing you need to do is to get people to click on your ad, right? And that is by using the right keywords. What I would do is go on sites like Indeed and ZipRecruiter, search for jobs in your area and see how your jobs are performing. Test out some different keywords. You could even post 2 different jobs with different job titles, find out which ones work the best, and continue to optimize that. So from there, you got to get them to click on. There's some other things you could do, like adding your compensation to the job or getting reviews connected to your job. Those are things that make your job stand out on the results list from the other jobs, and will get more people to click on it. From there, you've got to be able to convert them from someone who clicked on it to applying. And that is all about your job description and getting people excited. After that, you start measuring the whole process of once someone applies, how do you get them in for an interview? And then what are your steps from there? And Todd, I think a lot of it's just about tracking the data and then continuing to experiment and make adjustments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's important for everybody to understand, the financial opportunity that you have in improving, just those small increments from, what we said, just under 12,000 to 71,000, so 2x to 5x, by just really focusing on that process. And so that really resonated with me. And then the last process, bullet point that you talked about is essentially retention starts from day one. It starts from the hiring process. And that's something that we nailed on earlier this year, was really understanding 59% of caregiver turnover happens in the first 3 months of employment. So let's talk about how we solve that. Is that bad hire? Is it not a good fit? Is it not a great culture fit? So I think those are things that we definitely should consider, and are great best practices that that can leave. And I do want to launch a poll. So Tyler, if you'll kick this off as we kind of summarize and start to kick into the Q&A. But you know, before everybody has to jump off the line because we are running out of time, you know, first one, would you like to learn a little bit more about Home Care Pulse and our processes? So we'll leave this one up right now, and then we'll continue to kind of answer some of the Q&A while these polls are up.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, Todd, is that we put an initiative in place called Hire Up that is really meant to help companies get through COVID, and we're offering 2 months free of our product, no strings attached, for anyone who signs up with us before the end of this month. So we launched this in April, and it's been going on through May. So if you go to our website, careerplug.com/hireup, it's essentially a program that it's a way for us to give back. Give back is one of our core values, and we were like, how can we help small businesses through this time? And one thing I said was, well, if we can help them hire some people without having to spend any money in the short term, I think that would help them and you know, just build some loyalty there. We also, I mentioned the partnership with My CNA Jobs. We also have a partnership with ZipRecruiter that we're launching. So anyone who signs up with us is going to get 30 days of free premium posts on ZipRecruiter right now as well. So definitely a good time to be talking to us.
Yeah, and we've launched that poll. So to make it easy for everybody, you know, simply answer the poll question, and Clint and his team will reach out to you to talk a little bit more about the two free months, which is an awesome initiative at a time when hiring is tough. And I think we can all acknowledge hiring is hard. And yes, people are making more on unemployment than they are working. Those are problems, but there are people that want to work. And Clint spoke to that, and there's resources that we can kind of initiate to solve that. So while this poll is up, answer that. Clint and his team will reach out to talk a little bit more about that. So let's summarize what you're going to get. So revenue growth is coming back. Establish your safety protocols and use the best practices that Clint spoke about for, you know, gravitating towards stability. You know, how do you hire? We call it GWC here at Home Care Pulse. Do you get it? Do you want it? And do you have the capacity for it? Those are some of the principles we hire on. And then, of course, our core values. One of the other things, too, Clint, you spoke about was the newsletter and how you communicate. And this is a new initiative at Home Care Pulse, too, because just like all of you, we've got a fragmented workforce working from home. We don't get to see them, feel them, hear from them. So we wanted to make sure everybody stayed on the same page. And, you know, Tyler, you can say yes or no on this, but I'll share exactly what ours looks like right here. If everybody's seeing that, Tyler, if you'll close that poll. But here's we can send out this template so everybody can kick off a newsletter, but we highlight work anniversaries, birthdays, employee recognition. You can see, you know, that we talk about our core values, and then an employee spotlight and the book of the month. Very simple. We're happy to include that as a follow-up to the email of items that you'll get. So continue to watch your email. You'll get information that Clint spoke about. We'll reference that. Links to get a few of those downloads. The safety protocols, that was a huge question. And then more resources and recruiting retention tools. With that being said, there are a couple questions that I want to address. We'll hard stop here in about a couple minutes. But before we do that, you know, let's answer a couple questions. One of the big ones definitely that I can kick off right away. It talks about the caregiver satisfaction and having it go up just 0.12. You know, is that significant? We're talking about hundreds, you know, 100,000, 200, 300,000 survey responses. So to see it go up that much, that is significant to answer your question. Yes, it's huge, because when you're talking about that much data, it takes a lot to influence it. So that's a huge jump from what we historically see. month over month or quarter over quarter or even year over year. So keep that in mind. And then Tyler, you have some questions too to shout out. And one of the big ones, the big three or the ability to motivate. What was the last one there, Clint?
It's a culture fit.
Culture fit, perfect. And then do you talk about the other question that I saw trending was really in the portion about essentially when they're hired and the conversation with the manager and an employee about expectations. Do you recommend, Natalie, Clint, doing that also, pre-hire to make sure they're a good fit? Because there's a huge gap in interview to hire ratio in that sales funnel. Does it make sense, to also, brief on the expectations and what they're being hired for, during that time too? I know everybody talks about expectations, but, transparency there, I think, is one area that we could definitely improve on, of just laying out the groundwork even during the interview, not just post-hire. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah,
go ahead, Natalie.
Yeah, I can take that. I think as far as, I talked about reviewing the job description, expectations, training on day one, that should be a refresher. That should definitely be in the hiring process, going through the expectations of the job. Some of those other questions, like how do I want to receive feedback? How does someone win and lose with me? Those are really great interview questions as well. I might just ask them in a little different way. So one question I use is, tell me about the last time you received feedback and how did that go? Tell me about the last time you had a really good day at work. What made that a good day for you? So you're actually teasing a little more deeper, where the expectations interview, once the post-hire, is just being a little more explicit and kind of like agreeing, okay, here's how we're going to work together, but nothing should be a surprise at that point.
Perfect. Yeah, and that's one thing that I know you probably talk about, that top 20% of how they hire is also just how fast they hire. And that's something at Home Care Pulse we've researched and have data on, that the number one reason why a caregiver chose the job is because it was the first job offered to them. So you've got this small pie that Clint spoke about. How do you get a bigger piece of that? Be the first one to get them through your screening and applicant and culture fit, and that'll definitely increase it. One of the other questions that has come in has to do with pay and ideas for getting caregivers to work more hours. There's been two really things that I've seen out there when it comes to getting people to increase the number of hours they work, and also getting individuals, has pay rates gone up right now? So I'll address pay rates first. A lot of people are offering hero pay or some sort of incentive to during COVID-19 to either take a COVID-19 patient. So that's one successful way to talk about pay and pay rates for caregivers. It is tying it to performance or the risk factor. The other part of getting employees to work more hours that we've had agencies communicate to us that is successful is also offering bonuses based on number of hours worked during this time. So they can receive a $100 bonus if they work over 90 hours in a month, or et cetera, et cetera. So look at what your median hours worked is and target the ones that are below that. Just communicate with them, once again, what Clint spoke about earlier, great communication to getting them to increase the number of hours. Now, with that being said, we are right out of time. So I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to see contact information once again for Clint and his team. So feel free to reach out to either us at Home Care Pulse or CareerPlug directly. We'll get you in touch with the right people. Watch for the follow-up. The recording will be included along with the resources that we spoke about today in today's webinar. And once again, thank you everybody for joining. I know I took a lot of great things that I can apply just even at Home Care Pulse. We're very similar to you guys as an agency. hire a lot of individuals. And so thank you very much. I think it's always great to get the foundation. Clint, Natalie, thank you guys for jumping on board and really teaching us some of the fundamentals and then some new learnings too. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Todd.
With
Have a
that,
good one, everyone. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. And we'll have you guys again shortly. We'll bring the CareerPlug team back soon. With that being said, thank you everybody for joining us today. Have a great time and stay safe. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly, todd@homecarepulse.com, and I can get you in touch with any of the resources spoke about. Also watch your email for the follow-up. Thanks again.